So, I get to the point and I say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I would like to go to work for you tonight. And what's going to happen, typically, is people are going to say, how much do you think you can get for my house? And I'm going to say, I think that's a really good question. But before we answer that question, let's answer the question of whether or not I'm the right agent. If we can get together on price tonight, are you prepared to let me go ahead and start to represent you tonight? It's important that you do this because what you're doing is you're taking away all objections except price. Any other objections have to come up now. So when he says, well, no, we can get together on price, we're good, let's do it. Or if he says, no, I want to do this, then you've got to answer that objection and then go back. But you've got to get the sale down to price. And once you get to price, you have to use the pricing presentation. So it starts out this way. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, whenever we talk about price, as we did earlier, we need to recognize that price is a range. There is no exact price for your house. Price is always a range. Anybody who comes out here and tells you how much they know your house is going to sell for is either very new and very naive, or they're just simply trying to buy your listing by telling you a price that you want to hear. So when we talk about price, the first thing is the price is range. Don't believe anybody who says they have the right price. And the objective, like we said right at the beginning, is to not end up at the bottom of the range, but to get to the top of the range, right? Isn't that what we're trying to do? So let's talk about how we do that. First of all, there are 4 people who are going to put price on your house. You as the seller, I know, have a price in mind. You don't have to tell me what it is, but if you don't, then you're the first seller in the history of the world that did not have a price that he was looking for. So you have a price. The second person who's going to put price on a house is going to be the buyer. What do you think the buyer is going to come up with the same price that you do? No, we both know he doesn't, don't we? So right away we've got a range. We've got your want and his offer. So that's a range right there. The third person that puts price on a property is the appraiser. The appraiser is the price professional. He's the person who's supposed to be able to come over here and tell us exactly what it's worth. And then the fourth person who puts price on a property is the agent. Out of these 4 people, whose opinion counts least? The agent. The agent. It's not my money. I'm not the buyer or the seller, and I'm not the price professional. So an agent can tell you whatever he wants to tell you to get your listing. And whatever he tells you is not going to affect at all what you end up with when you get to the closing table. So let's talk about how this really works. In the real world, that you as a seller are going to end up with the lesser of what the buyer or the appraiser thinks your house is worth. Let me explain. We put your house on the market for $300,000. We sell it for $300,000. The appraiser comes along and he says, it's worth $285,000. What are you going to sell it for? $285,000, right? So you ended up with what the lower or the buyer or the appraiser thought, didn't you? If, on the other hand, we got it appraised before we put it on the market, and the appraiser came out, and he said, this house is worth $300,000, and we marketed, got multiple contracts, and the best contract we could get was $285,000, what would we end up selling it for? $285,000. Regardless of what anybody else tells you, you need to recognize that at the end of the day, when you get to the closing table, you're going to get the lesser of what the buyer or the appraiser tells you your house is worth. Now, nobody can promise you that you'll have an appraisal for the sales price. But I would tell you that some agents have more appraisal problems than other agents do. And I have very few appraisal problems. And I'll tell you why. Because when I sell your house, the last thing I'm going to do when I walk out the door that evening is I'm going to stop at the lockbox and I'm going to take the key out. And nobody's going to get in your house without me letting them in. And that means the appraiser, when he gets ready to appraise it, has to do what? He has to contact me, doesn't he? What a lot of agents do is just tell the appraiser, go on out, keys in the lockbox. Okay? I'm going to meet the appraiser out there. And when I meet the appraiser out there, if it's cold or it's in the morning, I'm going to have a cup of Starbucks for him. If it's hot or it's in the afternoon, I'm going to have a bottle of water for him. If he drives up and he's got a Seminole sticker on his car, I'm a Seminole. If he drives up and he's got a Gator license plate, I can do the Gator chomp. The point is, I'm going to establish rapport with him, and then I'm going to sell him your house. I'm going to make sure he understands about your upgraded cabinets. I'm going to make sure he understands that you've got $30 a yard carpet instead of $15 a yard carpet. I'm going to make sure he understands that you're at the end of the cul-de-sac instead of at the beginning of the cul-de-sac. I'm going to be his friend. I'm going to be helpful. I'm going to give him comps. I'm going to do everything I can, because at the end of the day, appraisers are people too. And he's going to end up someplace in that range. And if he likes me, and I do a good job of selling your house, he's going to get as far as up in the range as he can. And if he doesn't like me, or I haven't done a good job of selling a house, maybe he's only get halfway there. And whose pocket does that money come out of? Comes out of yours, doesn't it? So you need to know that when you hire me, I'm going to sell your house 2 times. 1, I'm going to sell it to the buyer, and 2, I'm going to sell it to the appraiser. And when I've sold it to both of them, you will know that when you go to closing, that you got the most money that you could possibly get from your house. So let's talk about price just a step further. I think there's 2 things every seller needs to recognize about price. First of all, it's easier to go down than it is to come up. Just makes sense, doesn't it? Okay? If he doesn't sell at X, he's probably not going to sell at X plus 10. Okay? So agents always want you to price your property where it's got to sell. Well, I'm fine with that, but you don't have to have it sold next week, right? So what if we take 3 weeks and try for something more? Is there any skin off your nose? No, it probably isn't. So it's easier to go down than it is to come up. You need to recognize that. And number 2, the market will tell us if the price isn't right. So if we do all the things that we've talked about, if we expose your house to 100% of the market, which is what we said we've done, and nobody comes, what's the market telling us? Telling us the price is too high, isn't it? That's pretty easy. If, on the other hand, we expose it to all these people and we have 15 or 20 people walk through and we don't get any offers, what's that telling us? It's telling us that our merchandising isn't as good as our marketing. That our marketing was so good that we got all these people to come through, but when they saw the product, they didn't think the product was worth the price. So the market tells us if the price is wrong. And if you don't have to have it sold next week, then we need to make the market do that. So you and I need to form a partnership. There are certain things that you control, and there are certain things that I control. And if we do this right, it will work out for you and you'll get the best price. My job is to expose your house to the entire market. Make sure everybody sees it. And I think we all agree that my Insider Review program does that in a way that nobody else can do it. My second job is to listen to the market and see what it tells us. You know, the market's not a steady thing. It might be up this week and down this week. It can be busy, it can be slow. You know, that's the way it goes. So if you're a part-time real estate agent, or if you're not a very active real estate agent, it's very difficult to tell that you're not getting any showings because the product's wrong or because of the market. I'm a full-time professional. I'm an active real estate agent. I'm in the market every single day, and I know if the market's slow. I know if we ought to sit pat. I know if the market's telling us that it's too much money. You're hiring me to listen to the market and relay to you what the market says. And that's my third job, to report to you. Mr. Seller, I can promise you this. I will never lie to you. You might not like what I have to say. I might not say it to anybody other than you, but I will always tell you the truth. If I were a seller, that would be what I would want, and I would think that as a seller, that would be what you want, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Am I right? I thought I was. That's my job. Your job is to be the employer. You're hiring me, right? Just like you'd hire somebody else. You need to set the initial price based on what the market says is reasonable and where you want to be. And you need to be comfortable with the initial price that you set on a house. Where do you feel we ought to start? It's at this point that you be quiet and you let him give you his price. If I say 300 and he says 315, now I've got to justify my 300, don't I? If I be quiet and he says 315 and I say, you know, my market data shows me that we really ought to be starting at 300, how did you get to the 315? Now who's justifying their price? He is. We've turned the whole thing around so that the bad price has to be justified by the seller and not by us. It keeps us in a position where we don't have to go up and tell people fibs in order to get the listing. We're simply negotiating the initial list price. Okay? If it has to be 315, let it be 315. But what we've done is we've told him what we really think. We didn't say, well, 300 and he says 315. You go, well, maybe we can do 315. Okay? You stood where you were and you let him win with a covenant that if it doesn't work out in 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever, the price is going to come down to $299. Okay? So when you do it that way, it puts you in a position that you win every single listing that you want. But we made 4 sales, all in the right order. We sold Coldwell Banker and Coldwell Banker Vanguard Realty. That was sale number 1. We sold Insider View, which nobody can compete with. That's number 2. We made the personal sale. I feel comfortable working with you. I hope you feel comfortable with me. And then we nailed it down with price. And when we do that, we walk out the door with a listing contract almost every single time. Okay? That's the Insider View listing presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. And more importantly, I hope you use it. Thanks for watching.